the Dodgers are not ruining baseball, but we'll talk about it. Let's go ahead and watch this. I did speed it up so we could go a little bit faster.
Awesome. The first one I asked you, Buzz, we talked a little bit about it before the show. Now you're kind of in, okay, are the Dodgers kind of what the Yankees were in the late 90s and the 2000s? I mean, a lot's going to be made about that team being the last team to repeat. We haven't had a repeat champion in Major League Baseball since 2000. But the first one I ask you, though, is considering the Dodgers are a reigning champion, is this the most aggressive you've ever seen a team be? Just the offseason following a World Series title?
Certainly, since I've been covering baseball, without a doubt. I mean, it has just felt like every day brings news of another big signing by the Dodgers, and it just goes and goes and goes. What's $1.7 billion committed over the course of this offseason to a team that won the World Series? It's pretty remarkable. It's getting a lot of conversations in baseball, as you know. There are people around the sport who will, on one hand, say, hey, it's not only about the Dodgers and their money, but it's about building a great culture. They clearly have a fun team. I think there are players who now gravitate toward the Dodgers as a place where they want to be. And that can change from year to year in baseball. I think in recent years, people have loved, for example, the Atlanta Braves clubhouse, and players at times have talked about the Phillies clubhouse. But right now, the place where a lot of great players want to be is with the Dodgers. So all those factors are going in to put them in this great position. But there's also no question that there's a lot of unhappiness with other teams. The phrase gluttony was used to me by a rival executive over the last week, especially as the Dodgers went from getting Sasaki to getting Tanner Scott, to loading up on their bullpen the way that they have Kirby Yates.
But Buster,
let me just comment on that. The Dodgers are spending money like it ain't anybody's business, but the Dodgers are worth like $5.2 billion. Like it ain't nobody's business. Yeah, like my friend's texting me. They're worth like 5.2 bill. The Dodgers are not worried about, and I think the Guggenheim Group is worth $100 billion together. The Dodgers are not worried about, oh my God, we can't pay players. It's not the Frank McCourt days when he was struggling to even write checks to the lowest paid players, or players like Dave Roberts, who was a Dodger before, Adrian Beltre, Eric Gagne, Manny Ramirez, Clayton Kershaw, all these guys, Kenley Jansen, just everyone on the team, Matt Kemp, he was struggling. Andre Ethier, James Loney, just all these guys. And the Dodgers don't have that problem. And if people are wanting to come to the Dodgers, think about it. You have 50,000 people every single night. Every night, you got 50-something thousand people or somewhere near it cheering you on. Whether the Dodgers are in a 20-game slump, a 50-game slump or not, the Dodger faithful are always there. Yeah, I throw tantrums, whatever, right? But we're always there. The stadium is always packed. You got a DJ system, a DJ and a sound crew, and just amazing sounds going on to cheer you on. That's what's going on. I'm thinking of that song from Natalie Imbruglia. That's what's going on. I'm so glad I'm torn. However the song is, right? The point is, guys, people want to be on the Dodgers for a reason. They've got the best development staff in baseball, the best scouting staff, the best trainers, coaches, trainers, pitching prospects. They got the best pitching development staff. They can turn a lackluster, below average hitter into a superstar hitter that when he goes into free agency and if he doesn't stay with the Dodgers, his stock value goes way up like this. They have incredible amenities, the best medical team money can buy. You name it, you go on and on and on. Now they've built an incredible center field plaza in the right and left field pavilion. They've built bars. They have a lot of restaurants now. They've got food from different origins and different religions and different cultures and creeds, and it's beautiful. Taco Tuesdays and Throwback Thursdays, all of that. One of the best, aside from the Oakland Coliseum. I know they're suffering, but one of the best postseason atmospheres on the planet. And players want to come to a team that can develop you into the best player you can be, that can win world championships like they did now, that can be that you have a chance to be in the postseason every single year, whether you go to the World Series or not. You have a chance to be in the postseason and make something of yourself. You can do all of that with the Los Angeles Dodgers. And if people are unhappy with the way the team is spending, going and getting Mike Soroto, getting Blake Snell, getting Tanner Scott, getting Roki Sasaki, guess what? That's not our fault. That's your guys' fault for not spending, for not creating a culture and a clubhouse and a training staff and a scouting crew and a front office and a management team that attracts players.
If you're the league, last postseason, you had Dodgers Yankees. It was the most viewed World Series since 2017. You have the face of your sport, the biggest superstar playing in a major market like Los Angeles. There's no way that Rob Manfred in the league has any issue with this, right?
Well, I think that they probably are concerned about the disparity. And if Rob Manfred isn't necessarily concerned, I think small market owners will be concerned. Now, I will tell you, it was more than a decade ago that Billy Beane, who runs the Oakland Athletics, and this is when the Yankees were sort of the dominant franchise in the sport, he told me about how sometimes fans would complain to him about, the Yankees have an unfair advantage, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And he defended the Yankees more than anybody. He said, look, it's great for the sport to have a team like the Yankees, the dominant franchise that everybody wants to see. And on the other hand, and I think this is where, rival owners are going to come into the conversation, to see the Dodgers with a payroll 6.5 times greater than the Marlins or 3 times plus greater than the Orioles. That's a disparity that other owners are going to complain about. And the last time we had a major labor stoppage in 94, 95, players went on strike, but the real internal fight was not about players versus owners. It was small market versus big markets. The owners basically, insisting that the players solve their problems at that time. And I think that's what the concern is among other teams, is that as the Dodgers sort of separate themselves financially, it's going to spur this internal war between owners.
But doesn't it kind of get lost in all this, the fact that, look, the Dodgers, they're the team that has the healthiest TV contract, $8.25 billion. You have an ownership group that wants to make this the golden age of Dodger baseball. At some point, you just have to accept the fact that the great players around the league are going to want to join the organization. Yep. It's not just about what they give you from a contract standpoint. So you're in Los Angeles, you're competing for championships, you have the baseball development department, you have the analytics department. It just feels like, to me, it is an organization that has everything buttoned up and they're fully realizing that potential. Let's not forget, Buster, we lived through the McCourt era. It was very, very different. We lived through a guy that was struggling to write checks for his players when it came to payday. So we're enjoying this.
As you should. And look, I think those late 90s Yankees teams are a great comp to what's going on. Not only the Yankees have a lot of money, that was a given, but they developed Derek Jeter and Andy Pettitte and Mariano Rivera. And on top of that, you had players, star players wanting to come to them. When Roger Clemens was traded by the Toronto Blue Jays, he basically, through his no-trade clause, forced his way to the Yankees. Chuck Knobloch did the same thing. That's kind of where the Dodgers are, right? If you are a successful veteran and you want a chance to win a World Series, what team gives you a better chance in this moment than the Dodgers? So, we have focused a lot on Sasaki during the course of this offseason, but you think about a guy like Michael Conforto, comes over from the Giants on a 1-year contract. He's had some ups and downs. He's had some injuries. My goodness, he's going to have so much fun this year being on this team. He's not going to have the same sort of role that he had when he was with the Mets, when he was always a full-time player, and there's no question he's going to be in the lineup, but he's going to the Dodgers because he wants to win a championship in part. And I think that's how the team is viewed by a lot of players right now.
Yeah, and I'll get the baseball analytics department, the ticketing sales. Everybody in the Dodgers organization has upped the bar that you need to have in an effort to succeed. And that's right. What Roger Clemens, Chuck Knobloch, I think is his name. All those guys wanted to come to the New York Yankees and go to the Yankees. It was because of the fact that George Steinbrenner, unlike his idiot of a son, ass of a son, Hal Steinbrenner, George Steinbrenner made the Yankees a want to be at destination. You wanted to wear those pinstripes. You wanted to be in that uniform. The Dodgers are doing exactly that. Sure, the Dodgers can spend $10 billion on payroll if they wanted. That would be freaking crazy, right? They could spend $5, $6, $7, $8 billion, $3 billion, $30 billion. It doesn't matter because it's a culture that you create, a winning culture, an $8.25 billion TV contract. When you know that people are going to listen to you on the radio, they're going to watch you on TV, they're going to listen to you in the car, they're going to watch you on their phones, wherever people are, they're going to want to watch you, and they're going to have the chance. And not only that, but that development of players, like I talked about, like they did with Jeter and Mayhew and all those guys.
Yeah, and Buster, one thing that I've been kind of saying is, last time I checked, isn't Boston a major market? Why didn't they pay Mookie Betts? Is Atlanta a major market? Why didn't they pay Freddie Freeman? The Angels, they didn't even want to match what Shohei Ohtani was getting for the Dodgers. Is there kind of a misconception out there in your mind as far as how they're utilizing the deferrals and just how they're going about their business and knowing that other teams can do the exact same thing if they wanted to?
Especially when you're talking about deferrals that don't have interest.
Yeah.
This is not, it's almost a no-brainer in business. When I covered the Baltimore Orioles, Peter Angelos, the Orioles owner, loved to defer salary that was without interest because he knew he could use the money. That's exactly what the Dodgers are doing. Every other team has the opportunity to do that. They should do it. And I think Peter Seidler, the late great owner of the San Diego Padres, demonstrated to a lot of other owners, look, it's not only about what your cash flow is, but you can use the equity of the franchise. The idea that the Padres now went from being, generally speaking, a small market team to being a place that's probably one of the most popular games to attend. That's because Peter Seidler decided he wanted to build something great. You talk to folks with other teams, they think the Padres are nuts with how they spend money. They think they're going to have a problem financially going forward. I asked Peter about all that a couple of years ago, and I'm behind home plate in San Diego, and he looked at me and said, we'll be fine. Because he knows that the equity of the team is way up. So here, some of these owners, I know Tom Ricketts bought the Cubs for $865 million, and now it's worth God knows how much money, $3 billion, $4 billion. You're telling me that signing a $150 million player this winter would have potentially threatened his wherewithal? I don't think so. I agree with you. The premise of your question that other owners can do more.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things too where, you got the proximity, LA to Japan. We know that is favorable for Japanese players. I got to go back and thank Walter O'Malley for moving this team to Los Angeles. And the organization, you got Sandy Koufax behind you, players that have made this an iconic franchise. But in your mind, I know it's a very nuanced conversation, maybe a 2-hour-long podcast about having a salary cap or a salary floor. But do you think there will be any change in the next 3 to 5 years when the next CBA comes around too that could negatively impact the Dodgers and how they're going about constructing their roster?
And before we get there, just a real quick thing. We already talked about this, but yeah, the Dodgers are deferring so much money. They're going, the deferrals, the Los Angeles deferrals. You guys can do it too. You guys can defer all that money, let it build interest for you guys, put it in an escrow account, make you guys a lot of money. It'll be worth less later. Your players basically are going to be told, hey, you come here, I'll pay you $80 million. We'll defer 25 of the or 30 million of those dollars. So you'll earn $50 million while you're here, or we'll take $40 million. We'll take half. When you leave our team, let's say you retire and you leave and then you leave our team, you get $40 million just willy-nilly, go wherever. You want to go live in Mexico and live on $40 million, bro, you'd be the richest guy on the planet in Mexico, in their eyes. And you guys can avoid paying taxes here, and you guys can move it around, and you guys can do whatever you want. We're building you a retirement account. And by the way, come and win a World Series. Oh, by the way, you win too. That's what the Dodgers are doing now, salary cap.
Not without a major war. Like, I think to get to that point, it would have to be a shutdown of the sport. We know that in the last labor negotiation, I'll try to keep it streamlined. In the last labor negotiation, the owners presented an idea for a salary cap, salary floor to the players, and it was dismissed within 15 minutes. To this point, the Player Association, has their stated principle is that they just don't believe in a salary cap. Now, I do think, and there are a lot of agents, there are a lot of folks in baseball who believe that the idea should be examined, because if it means more money for more players on the union side, why wouldn't you at least take a look at it, right? And so I'm curious to see if that happens the next time around, because privately some players are wondering, look, if there's a bigger pie for us all to share in, maybe it's an idea that we could look into. But at the moment, I think the owner or the players are absolutely dead set against this idea. And to get to that point, for small market teams to force the sport to move in that direction, they would have to shut down the sport for some time.
Yeah, it feels like that would have to be the way they would go about to get real significant change. Now, what are your thoughts a little?
Yeah. You're not going to get a bunch of baseball players making $80 million a year, let's just say, or $30 million a year, to agree to a salary cap. You're just not going to do it. Big owners are not going to want a salary cap, because if I can promise Shohei Ohtani $700 million or Juan Soto $765 to $805 million, right? Like, if I can promise them that and guarantee it, why would I then decide that the floor is $200 million? Sorry, Juan Soto, I can only pay you $200 million. And that's market wide. You're gonna make it less attractive for people to come into the sport, and I think it would cause such a major war that it just wouldn't happen.
A little bit on Roki Sasaki. Of course, that was the talk of baseball for the offseason. And what I've been kind of telling the viewers of this show is you're pretty much getting a guy who could be a $200, potentially $300 million player for less than $10 million. And one thing I've been saying is, hey, what if Paul Skeens could have just chosen any team he wanted to play for? Do you think that there should be some level of international draft or anything like that? I mean, we have things in place now, but what are your thoughts on just the Dodgers landing Roki Sasaki and how that transpired?
Well, first and foremost, he's considered already to be one of the best pitching talents in the world. And the idea that you get the player at age 23 with 6 years of control going forward, not have to sign a 30-year-old free agent, to upgrade your rotation. What an absolute win for the Dodgers. I will tell you flat out, folks with other teams absolutely believe the fix is in on this thing. They thought there was an agreement behind the scenes, that the Dodgers had this thing going all along. They were mad with how it played out. They were asked, the teams, going through this process, were asked to give information to Sasaki on what they would suggest to improve his fastball. They handed that information over. Now it's proprietary information that's in the hand of the pitcher and the Dodgers. So a lot of it made teams mad, but the bottom line is the Dodgers get a great pitcher, and someone who, and I think the Dodgers right now are the perfect team to have him, because they will slow play him, as you know. Like, they are not going to push him. There would be some organizations that would get a player like that and say, you know what, we want you to throw 200 innings, we want you to throw 220. We're going to have you run until you fall apart. The Dodgers, if he threw 140 innings this year, it would shock me. Like, I could see with the depth in their rotation, they can protect him a little bit, and they will protect him a little bit. And in some respects, I think that means it's a great place for him to go. Now, the question of an international draft or other teams having access to that's going to be one of the arguments I think we have before the next labor agreement, where small market teams say this isn't right. That the Dodgers basically, have a beachhead in Japan for the best players there. They have an advantage over the rest of us that we can't overcome.
Yeah, I'm going to comment on the first part first. The Dodgers got a steal for a pitcher. They had to pay Yoshinobu Yamamoto $325 million because he could qualify as a free agent and get a major league contract. They had to compete really, really intensively. The Dodgers were at a disadvantage here. They were at a financial disadvantage. Normally, it was like, oh my God, the Dodgers, of course, because they had the financial advantage. He could have signed for $10 million with the San Diego Padres, $8 million possibly with the maybe even $10, $12 million with the Toronto Blue Jays. And he chose the Dodgers for the reasons we've discussed, because it's a winning organization. So cry me a river, okay? I don't want to hear it. And the Dodgers were at a financial disadvantage. That is just how things go. And if teams want to get mad about that, we'll let them get mad. It is on you and on your team's owners and their management and their front office to play the card of business, play the game of business and win it. If they don't, it's on them.
Joel Wolf was saying the other day, I mean, he felt like when they left San Diego, he could have signed with the Padres. When they left Toronto, he could have signed with the Blue Jays. But just all things you point out, I mean, 6-man rotation, the ability to not force him into being your number one guy. I think all those things make so much sense for Roki. So I'm like, hey, how can you blame the guy? Also, as your colleague Jeff Hassan pointed out, I mean, Shohei brought Decoy to the dinner in Bel Air. How do you say no to that? Okay, I mean, I'm not saying Decoy is a better GM than AJ Preller or anything like that, but I think that is something that definitely appealed to him. Now, when you look,
normally, as Buster said, like, you have to play 220 innings, start 220 innings for a lot of other teams. If you've got Blake Snell, Gavin, I'm sorry, not Gavin. If you got Tyler Glasnow, Blake Snell, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, and let's say, I don't know, Clayton Kershaw, Shohei Ohtani, Dustin May. And let's just say maybe not Dustin May. Let's say it's Tyler Glasnow, Blake Snell, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Shohei Ohtani, Clayton Kershaw, and you, Roki Sasaki, right? What you now have is a 6-man rotation where you could start on every sixth day, and because Ohtani's been, maybe you start every 7th day, and Ohtani starts every 6th day, because we can then take, say, Dustin May or Tony Gonsolin and start him over you to give you more rest and let you develop and let you get better, learn new things, fix your fastball, fix your velocity, whatever. That is an awesome, awesome thing. And we'll get to Roki Sasaki, but that's a steal, and it's an appealing thing for Roki Sasaki.
When you look at the rest of this Dodgers roster, I mean, on paper, they have a chance to really potentially go for the all-time wins record. We know that the Cubs, 1906, the Mariners, 2001, tied for 116 wins. A team that you were very closely covering in the late 90s, the Yankees, they won 114 games in the regular season, also 125 games total when you combine the regular season and the postseason. What I want to ask is, if you're the Dodgers, do you get enticed to try to go for that all-time record, knowing that you won the World Series with 98 wins last year? I mean, how do you think that comes into play? And do you think this team has the potential to be an all-time team?
So I think that is going to develop organically, the idea of becoming the all-time wins leader in a year. Beat the Yankees record in 98 of 125. But I could easily see, I mean, Dave Roberts, the Dodgers manager, as you know, grew up a Lakers fan. And one of the famous moments in Lakers history was, because in the NBA, there was a parallel situation. Teams hadn't gone back-to-back. And that at a championship rally, Pat Riley laid down the gauntlet for the Lakers and basically turned back-to-back, right? And he was pushing that team to try to do that. It wouldn't surprise me at all if that's what Dave Roberts does this year. If he makes that the focal point, let's become the first team that goes back-to-back. Now, we'll tell you, having covered that 98 Yankees team, that, you know, that team was incredibly motivated after getting knocked out in the playoffs in the first round the year before. And they brought an intensity to the ballpark day after day after day, which is really hard in a way that I had not seen. And I don't think we've seen hardly ever. They finally kind of ran out of gas a little bit at the beginning of September. And that's going to be the challenge for the Dodgers, you know, as the season goes along, is keeping up that day-to-day intensity. You know that with a lot of great players, they're going to win a lot of great games. But if they start out the season, you know, 80 and 35 or 80 and 30, all of a sudden that carrot's going to be in front of them. And the players will organically begin to think about driving for a record. In the way that the 98 Yankees did, in the way that the 2001 Mariners did, you know, just a few years after the Yankees won 114, the Mariners won 116. That becomes something that pushes the players, especially through that lagging times of the regular season. So it can be a plus. But I will say, you know, knowing that the Dodgers' focus is going to be on winning back-to-back in the World Series, I think that they probably will fall short, because they'll make personnel decisions to protect their chances in October. They're not going to drive these guys, to play every day all through September to put themselves in a position to break a National League win record, for example. Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. If you get off to an extremely hot start, you're almost going to be pressured into going for it, just like the Patriots. Yeah, exactly. I mean, right? Sure, yeah. The players, the conversation among them, where they start to push each other a little bit. That's how those things develop. You know, not Dave Roberts or there's somebody in the front office saying, "Hey, we got to get this record." No, totally, 100%. I think if you're a Dodgers fan, you think to yourself, well, what happened in 2022 when we set a franchise record, 111 wins, and then you lose to that Padres team in the first round? So you kind of balance it out. But hey, winning's fun. I mean, it's fun to drive around your teams winning and you're having that success. Now, as far as
we won 111 games. We beat that Padres team 14 of 19 times. And what happened? 14 of 19 times, and then they beat us in 3. So I don't want to hear it at all. They beat us in 3, and we lost the series. Okay, And that's just what happened. I want more wins as a Dodgers. I can't believe they lost, but they won 98 games and won the World Series. I think the Atlanta Braves won 85 games and won the World Series. You don't need 128 wins, 130, 162 wins to win the World Series. If you get 98 wins, 100 wins, even 85, 86 wins, but you power your ass and get your gas done, like put your gas on, put the pedal to the metal in the postseason when you really need it, when it really gets intense, that's where you shine. That's what we need, and that's where the Dodgers shine.
As far as what the Dodgers might continue to do to finish up this roster, I kind of want to ask you about a player like a Kike Hernandez. I mean, you got guys like Shohei and Freddie and Mookie, all these future Hall of Famers, All-Stars. I mean, for teams that you covered, how important is someone like a Kike Hernandez to bring back and just really put the finishing touches on a roster like this?
Incredibly important. Again, my experience in covering an all-time great team was that 98 Yankee team. And I think guys like Luis Sojo and Tim Raines and Darryl Strawberry, who at that time, he wasn't the MVP Darryl Strawberry, he was a part-time player. They were really important. What separated that team was its depth. And that's what the Dodgers potentially have that. I think that's where their bullpen moves have come in. They've got good relievers. Ryan Brazier's a good reliever, but it does seem like that they feel like, look, if we can go from having a grade B reliever to having an A- reliever, we're taking that, right? Every time. And again, the season is so long. I think that if you're a fan and you look at the players and you tune in one game and you imagine them having the same intensity that you did when you played Little League, it's not that way. This is their daily job, and they go through ups and downs like the rest of us do, where some days you're really into it and some days you're not really into it. And so to have personalities that bring energy to the park, positive energy to the park like Kike, that's incredibly important. Now, I haven't broken down the Dodgers roster and who would Kike replace per se. Who else do they want to get playing time for? Guys in the minor leagues, what are they going to do without them this year, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I think you absolutely have to pick the right personalities for those spots at the end of your roster.
Yeah, absolutely. And those guys you bring up, Raines and Soho, and those guys are so important. I've been calling Kike, you brought the Lakers earlier. He's like the Dodgers version of Derek Fisher, where he might not be in the Hall of Fame, but he's so important to their success as a role player.
I think they need to bring Kike back. He is clutch in October. That is the only argument I'll ever make. It is. I'll make that argument. I'll make that argument all the time because Kike Hernandez is clutch in October. That's exactly what you need. Let's go.
Nolan Arenado is one of the best defensive third basemen, if not the best defensive third baseman of all time. He has made no mistake about the fact that he has an affinity for the Dodgers, grew up loving the Dodgers. Do you think that there's any world where they would go that direction and potentially swing in a deal for Arenado?
A stat to back up your point about him being a great defensive player. Earlier this week when Ichiro was voted in the Hall of Fame, in his first 10 years in the major leagues, he won a Gold Glove in every season. And I think he's tied with 3 other players for that. One of those is Nolan Arenado, who won a Gold Glove, in every year. Look, he has been on a platter for teams to make a trade for months. And I asked about the Dodgers about 6 weeks ago, and I have to protect the source, I have to sort of phrase it this way. I was told if the Dodgers wanted him, they would have gotten him. Right? It's not like it's been a secret that he's been available, and to this point, it doesn't look like that they're necessarily that he's at the top of their list in terms of an interesting player. One of the questions would be, I think, and I'll use what happened with Ichiro as an example. When he got traded from the Mariners to the Yankees, Brian Cashman told me this the other day. He sat on the side of the road, he pulled off the road when he was driving from East Florida to West Florida, and basically ran through all the scenarios with Ichiro. Look, are you going to have a problem if we pinch hit for you? Are you going to have a problem if we bench you? Are you going to have a problem not starting? Because, in Seattle, perception of Ichiro was that he was somewhat difficult for the manager. So Brian Cashman ran through that. A similar conversation would have to take place with Nolan Arenado, given the Dodgers culture. That Chase Utley came in and helped establish this, where players were okay being part-time players. Would Nolan be okay with that? I don't know, but I think that would probably be his Dodger experience if he were to be traded to LA.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And just look, Max Muncy's kind of one of those guys that on other teams, he's your all-star slugger in the middle of your lineup. The Dodgers, he is almost an afterthought sometimes, and they still like him, and he's still very productive. My favorite Ichiro stats, too, you brought the Gold Glove thing. He led the league in singles 10 years in a row, and there's only been 2 times you've had one guy hit over 200 singles in a season. It was him, man. I mean, this guy was incredible. I saw a picture of him meeting Peter O'Malley in 1995 when a Dodgers jacket. I'm like, man, what could have been, right? It would have been pretty awesome. So
I think Nolan Arenado is just a guy that I don't trust him now. I think earlier in his career, he was absolutely a devil to the Dodgers. He was just great, just greatness all around. I mean, 100, 200 singles. He won a Gold Glove every single year of his first 8-10 years in the league, in the major leagues. And look, we have Max Muncy at third base. He's an average defender, above average, I would say, not even below. I don't know how many games I've done with our guy Oscar Montiel when we've streamed them, where we've seen Max Muncy throw away a game or a run or whatever, and he couldn't save a run or he couldn't do anything, or he makes a defensive mistake and it creates a mishap, right, for a pitcher, right? I've seen that all the time. But Nolan Arenado had a chance like 2 or 3 years ago, maybe even 4 or 5, when Max Muncy was injured and he wasn't even coming back anytime soon at any time. And even if he did, he'd have to rehab, develop, and get back to what he was after he blew his elbow in 2021. Nolan Arenado could have come at that time. And had he come at that time, I think the Dodgers would have taken him. And not only that, but the Dodgers were going to offer him a deal. And he said no. The Dodgers were in on him. So I don't want to hear any more about Nolan Arenado. He's just not going to be a Dodger. If the Dodgers wanted him, like Buster said, they would have gone out and got him, offered him a deal, something. Too late. sorry, Nolan, you're not going to be a Dodger.
Jack Flaherty, real quick, I want to ask about Jack Flaherty and his market, because we've seen, Blake Snell goes to the Dodgers, Freed to the Yankees, Burns goes to Arizona. Why do you think that the market is a little softer than what was originally anticipated for Jack Flaherty?
So here are my two questions about it. I don't know the answers because you're not in every meeting. You're not in every conversation. Because Jack, a lot of times when free agents are not signed at this point, your first question is, well, they tied to draft pick compensation, right? Nick Pivetta, for example, is in that boat. And you wonder if that's part of the reason why he's having to wait. Jack's not tied to free agent or to a draft pick compensation because he was traded in the middle of last year. So one of my questions would be, what's been the ask, from Jack's camp to teams? And maybe there's a big gap between what he's looking for. And we know that the Yankees flunked him on a physical last year. They're not doing that on a whim. And I suspect that teams, and I don't know, I don't have his medical records, but it would be one of the questions that I would ask. I wonder if, how many teams have looked at the medical records? Is that a factor as it was with Jeff Hoffman, who originally worked out a deal with the Atlanta Braves, and when that fell apart, he worked out a deal with the Orioles, and that fell apart because of the physical. So I'd be curious to see what teams are seeing in Jack Flaherty's physical.
It's got to be a factor. You saw the fastball velocity kind of dip towards the end there, but if I'm Jack Flaherty, I'm like, hey, I signed a 1-year deal. Hey, put together a really good season. I should have a contract by now. But you've seen teams kind of go to some of these shorter term deals for starters. Maybe it's the case for him. I don't think he'll be back to the Dodger, but he's very popular here in Dodger. I don't know if you saw him kind of making Manny Machado go back to the dugout and all those words. He's kind of got that once a Dodger, always a Dodger feel. But Buster, last question.
All right, before we get to the last question for him, I love Jack Flaherty. I adore him, but I do like him. I adore him as a Dodger, but I don't really want him back. Game 5 of the NLCS. What happens? He goes to New York, and the Mets beat the crap out of him. He got trampled in New York. He gave up that game. His fastball went down in velocity, way down. And it was like 8-3 or something like that. Game 4 of the World Series, before Game 5 and before all that happened. What happens? He gives up a hell of a lot of runs, and the bullpen was just gassed out. They lost their gas, they lost their fuel, their energy, their strength and ability because they've been used so much, and they were used more than I use my fridge. Okay, for my Cokes, for my Coca-Colas. Just saying. All right. He was not great. He gave up 14 of 18. He gave up 18 runs in the regular season when he came to the Dodgers in June, July. 15 of them were home runs. 14 of 18 runs were home runs. I'm not going to miss Jack Flaherty at all. I'm not. I like him, but I'm not going to miss him. So, yeah, I wonder what the problem is, why he hasn't signed, but I know that he wants to be back. I'm just not seeing it.